Hello everyone, and welcome to HotS by the Book. This is a new video series that I'll be starting where we will take a look at characters from Heroes of the Storm and break them down into guides so you can learn how to play them more effectively. Today we're going to be looking at Artanis, Hierarch of the Daylam. Artanis is a strong melee fighter with high sustain and very low burst. First we will start with the main part of his kit that makes him unique, which is Shield Overload, his passive. Under 75% health, whenever Artanis takes an attack, he will gain a small shield. The shield has a rather long cooldown, but will be reduced for every auto attack he deals, and his other abilities may also reduce the cooldown. Next up is his Q ability, Blade Dash. Artanis will move forward, dealing small amount of damage, and then return, dealing much more damage. For every enemy hit, his shield overload will be reduced by 1 second of cooldown, and for every enemy hero hit, it will be by 2 seconds. During Blade Dash, he has no collision with terrain or structures, but can be attacked and his hitbox can be damaged by roots and other things that will hold him in place and stop his dash. Next up is his W, Twin Blades. It will cause him to dash a short distance and deal 2 auto attacks to his target. These auto attacks do apply every single bonus to his auto attacks and will reduce Shield Overload's cooldown by 8 seconds if both hits occur. You may also cast his W while mounted and it will stay casted the whole time until it is used. Next up is his E, Phase Prism. It is a short skill shot that if it hits an enemy hero, it will swap Artanis' current position with his opponent's current position. This ability can be used in the middle of his Blade Dash ability and can cause some amazing combos to pull enemies over walls or behind their structures. It also allows Artanis some interesting escape routes, but is highly unlikely to be used in that situation. Phase Prism has a very long cooldown, so you have to be careful about when you use it and how you use it. Next up is one of his heroics, Purifier Beam. Using it will call down a beam of high damage, but will move very slowly and is unlikely to catch targets that are fleeing from it. It has unlimited range, can be cast anywhere on the map to anywhere else on the map as long as you can see your target. Next up is his second heroic, Suppression Pulse. Suppression Pulse is a giant field that will blind enemies and deal a small amount of damage. It also has a global range, but you do not need to see the area that you're casting it on to be able to cast it, and it will grant vision of the area. Next, we will be going over all his talent choices and what they may mean and what they may be good against. His Tier 1 talent choices are Reactive Parry, Amateur Opponent, and Seasoned Marksman. Reactive Parry grants Artanis block whenever he casts his W. It will block 75% of the damage and can store up to 2 charges to block auto attacks. This is generally picked against auto attack heavy teams and can be very strong, but you will usually only get 1 charge as you have to cast his W to get the charge. And the issue with that becomes that during a fight, if he engages with his W, he cannot get another charge until his W is off cooldown, meaning that double stacking it is completely impossible. Amateur Opponent will cause Artanis' W to deal 150% damage against non-heroic enemies. This includes structures, bosses, and mercenary camps. This of course will work against minions and any map objective that is not controlled by players like the Immortal. Seasoned Marksman is the questing talent for most auto attack carries that will increase damage for every enemy minion killed around them or killed by them. This talent becomes exceptionally useful when your team is lacking high amounts of damage and you can be that damage. His 4th level talent choices are Psionic Synergy, Shield Battery, and Shield Surge. Psionic Synergy decreases the cooldown reduction of his shield by 4 seconds for every enemy hero hit instead of 2 seconds. This becomes exceptionally good at burst shielding yourself if the enemies are grouping up or just trying to sustain your life more easily. Shield Battery reduces the cooldown of Shield Overload by 50% faster whenever the shield is actually active and will increase its duration by 1 second. This talent is nearly useless as your shield will almost always immediately get popped off of you when it gets activated. This does not increase your sustain in almost any fashion and is probably the worst talent on this tier. Shield Surge will increase your shielding by 80% when you are below 25% HP. This is an extremely strong talent and probably the most popular on this tier, although I personally do not enjoy it all that much. It is by far the most simple talent to use on this tier and is one of the most powerful, but it also has its weaknesses of if you die before you are actually at the 25% threshold by a burst damage dealer, you will immediately die and this talent will be completely useless to you. Next up is talent tier 7, which is Solarite Reaper, Warp Sickness, Chrono Surge, and Follow Through. Solarite Reaper is rather simple and it just increases the first dash of his Q by 150% damage to increase his total damage output of the ability. This is a rather unpopular choice as it doesn't really do anything for his kit and just kind of boosts his damage randomly. Warp Sickness slows the enemy's movement speed by 35% for 4 seconds after they get hit by Phase Prism. This is a very strong talent and is by far the most popular on this tier as it slows the enemies that you just caught out with your E. Next up is Chrono Surge, which increases your attack speed by 50% for 4 seconds after you swap an enemy. This talent is by far the most unpopular on this tier, and is probably the worst. It doesn't really give you anything, it just kind of increases your attack speed, but you're probably going to be stunned or CC'd for most of that duration, so there's really no point to it when you're in the middle of the enemy team. The last talent on this tier is Follow Through. It increases your attack by 40% on the next auto attack you deal in the next 6 seconds. It's a very good combo with his kit because his W counts as an ability activation and Follow Through will proc off of it, as well as his Q will bring him back to the enemy most of the time, and his swap doesn't go that far, so he can usually attack the same enemy he just swapped with a bonus attack. I personally like this talent for the high damage and burst potential, but it is not the most popular on this talent, only being taken slightly more often than Solarite Reaper. Next up is his heroic choice at level 10 between Suppression Pulse and Purifier Beam. Suppression Pulse is generally taken more often because you want to pick Artanis into auto attack heavy teams, and it is his strongest matchup. Purifier Beam very rarely gets value and is very uncommon to be taken in any kind of higher tier play. Next up is his talent choices at level 13, which are Templar Zeal, Triple Strike, Graviton Vortex, and Phase Bulwark. Templar Zeal will reduce the cooldown of Blade Dash by 100% faster when you are below 50% HP. This is a very good combo along with Psionic Synergy due to the fact that you can get your Blade Dash quicker, allowing you to get your shield even more often and even more quickly. This talent is by far the most unpopular choice at this talent tier due to the other choices, but I think it is very strong and it is my personal favorite. Next up is Triple Strike, which increases Twin Blades from 2 attacks to 3 attacks, but increases the cooldown by 1 second. This is by far the most popular and powerful talent on this tier, but I personally do not like it due to the fact that it increases the cooldown by 1 second, reducing your survivability. Next up is Graviton Vortex, which pulls another enemy and damages them near the enemy hero that you swapped. This is an extremely strong talent and has moderate popularity due to the fact that it can end up with some amazing combo AoE damage if you pull 2 enemies at once and your team just blows them up. Next up is Phase Bulwark. Anytime your shield overload activates, you will take 40% less damage from abilities for 4 seconds. This is an extremely strong ability against mage-heavy teams that have a lot of bursters that just want to kill you. If you're noticing you're getting popped really fast by a Li Ming or KT, this is probably the talent you want to take at this point. Next up is the level 16 talent tier choices, which are Zealot Charge, Titan Killer, Psionic Wounds, and Plasma Burn. Zealot Charge increases the dash distance of your W by 100%. This is not very popular choice and is not all that great due to the fact that you already have a charge, and this is only useful if the enemy are really fleeing from you and you really need to chase them down. Most often chasing is not the answer, but if it is, then this is the talent that you might need. Next up is Titan Killer. Whenever you use Twin Blades, you will deal an additional 2.5% of the target's maximum health in damage. This is an extremely popular and powerful talent that most people will pick. Due to the double tank meta that has been going on for a while and double bruisers, this is by far one of the most powerful things that you can pick and will crush most teams in your way. Next up is Psionic Wounds, which will make the enemy vulnerable on your last attack of Twin Blades, so they will take 25% additional damage for 2 seconds. This is not a very popular option, but it is the one that I prefer due to the fact that it is extremely useful for a team, and you can burst targets down really easily alongside your allies. It is completely understandable why this talent is not used, though, due to the fact that it is only the last strike of Twin Blades that apply it, and most people are taking Triple Strike, giving it negative synergy. Next up is Plasma Burn. That will make it whenever your shield overload is activated, you will deal a small amount of damage in an AoE around you every second. This talent is the most unpicked talent on this tier and is probably the worst. The damage is almost negligible and it is only very good at clearing out Zagara creep, but because it has to activate your shield overload, it is very unlikely that both will be happening at the same time, making it completely useless. Next up we have his level 20 talent choices: Orbital Bombardment, Target Purified, Force of Will, and Nexus Blades. Orbital Bombardment will give you 2 charges of Suppression Pulse. These charges cannot be used within 10 seconds of each other, and most fights don't last that long, so most people do not pick this talent. It is an alright talent if you think you're going to be needing to bombard them more often with your ultimate, but for the most part, this is completely useless, but somewhat powerful. Next up is Target Purified. If the target of the Purifier Beam dies, it will automatically be recasted on the next nearby enemy hero. This also means if a whole bunch of enemies die on the team fight and there is an Abathur on the map, it will automatically redirect him once they're all dead and try and kill him as well. This is an alright talent if you're going to actually pick Purifier Beam, but by far not the most powerful, but it is a very interesting choice and can have some pretty funny displays. Next up is Force of Will. It increases the cooldown reduction on your passive from 4 to 6 per auto attack. This is an extremely powerful and the most popular choice on this talent tier due to its extremely high ability to sustain you during fights. I particularly enjoy this talent, and with Triple Blades it is extremely powerful and will give you a huge amount of cooldown reduction to almost automatically refresh your shield. Lastly, we have Nexus Blades. Basic attacks deal 20% more damage and slow the enemy movement speed by 20% for 1 second. This talent has an extremely high win rate, even more so than Force of Will by about 8%. When you think about it, it makes a lot of sense due to the fact that people are taking triple strike. This would vastly increase their damage, increasing the entire burst that they have and making their win ratio insane. I personally do not go for this talent all that much because I don't take triple blades, but if I did, this is probably the go-to talent I'd take. And moving on from talents, we're going to talk about what are his best maps. Currently, his best map is Towers of Doom as of making this video, but what I think he's strongest on is indefinitely Battlefield of Eternity with the build to take Amateur Opponent at the start of the game. Haunted Mines is also a very good map for the same reason of the fact that Golem can be shredded by this talent. Towers of Doom is very strong for him because his ultimate ability is having infinite range. It means that he can poke out enemy altars that they're capturing. Praxis Holdout is also very strong for him due to the fact that he can 1v1 almost anyone in the top lane, and it gives him huge amounts of sustain with his shielding. Pretty much every other map is his lower win rate maps, but they're all very good, and you should strongly consider picking him there just for his 1v1 potential. The only maps I don't consider Artanis on is Tomb of the Spider Queen, Blackheart's Bay, and sometimes Infernal Shrines. These maps require a large amount of wave clear or camp taking, which Artanis simply does not have the power to do in most games. Also, the Punisher in Infernal Shrines is very dangerous to Artanis due to its stun, which can get him caught out and easily killed by the enemy team. Next, we'll discuss what team comp you might want Artanis in and what you want to pick him against. Artanis can fit in almost any team comp that will need a second frontliner to act as a bruiser. You will not want to pick Artanis as a solo tank, as his sustain is not as strong as it used to be. You also don't want to pick him into comps with low damage, as he will not carry you with his damage, such as Thrall or Alarak might. You don't want to pick him into low CC teams due to the fact that he has no hard CC of his own. Artanis is strongest when he can swap a target back to his team and they can lock him down and kill him. Artanis is also very strong against auto attack carry teams that have a Valo or Raynor. Suppression Pulse is extremely strong against these teams, so it's probably your dream to pick into them. He's also very strong against Kel'Thas, as the fact that he can swap him back if he's trying to do his talent and get him killed over and over again, so he can never finish his first level talent if they pressure him properly. But you also do not want to pick Artanis into too many mages or high CC enemy teams. Artanis' biggest weakness is being locked down and annihilated, so he can't auto attack or do anything to save himself and reproc his shield. If they have a Chromie or a Li Ming, it may be dangerous to pick Artanis into them, but it is not a deal breaker. Next, we're going to be going over general tips and tricks. Artanis requires timing to stay alive. Using Artanis' Q and W right when your shield pops for the 24-second cooldown is the most effective way to use them to reduce its cooldown. This is basically the most effective way to stay alive, and if you use these abilities without needing to, then you may get killed instantly due to the fact that you can't recharge your shield for so long. You must also be very careful when you're using your Q and your E. This uses up a lot of your sustain and cooldowns to try and swap an opponent out of position, but it also puts you far out of position. This will put you in high danger, and you may get killed instantly if the enemy has too much CC. This combo is probably most effective in the early game though, when you will not be heavily punished for it most times. Swapping an enemy back into whoever's ganking with you along with whoever was in lane will usually result in an easy kill and an EXP lead. Another important thing to keep in mind while playing Artanis is that his Q can be stopped by any CC, but also can his E. If Artanis is rooted or stunned as he casts his swap, the enemy will be swapped to him and Artanis will not move. Note that this does not apply to his enemies. If they get stunned, it will swap them back and push Artanis to their position. These interactions can be used to Artanis' advantage. If Artanis is in danger and an enemy Malfurion roots near his team, he can Q into the root intentionally to get himself stuck there, but also get away from the enemy. Same can be said for his E if he tries to swap an opponent and pulls in their carry for free due to the fact that he was Malfurion rooted. Another thing to remember with Artanis is that once you get Titan Killer, you do not always have to focus the enemy backline. Your damage against tanks becomes extremely high, and you can burst them down with ease to protect your carries in the back. It's also important to remember that you can use Phase Prism at any point during your Blade Dash. This can include to pull off enemy tanks that may be attacking your backline if you Q to the enemy team but throw your E backwards onto the tank and pull them away. This will also move you to safety, keeping you from going out of position unless you get rooted or CC'd. Also, it's important to keep in mind that your strongest point in the game is your late game. Once you hit level 13, you are starting to hit your biggest power spikes, and once you get to level 16, you finally have your Titan Killer talent, and at level 20, you get your strongest upgrade. All these directly go into team fighting and combat, so it's best to be used effectively and try and fight as often as possible as long as your team is ready. Now we'll talk about his camp taking and his ability to wave clear a little bit. Artanis is not able to clear a wave effectively due to the fact Blade Dash will not kill the entire wave in one hit. It will generally just weaken the wave to about half health. His Merc taking is not great due to the fact that it is very slow and it can only really kill one target at a time with very low damage. If you do not take Amateur Opponent, it is nearly impossible to kill a camp under 30 seconds and will take a large amount of your time, and you will lose a bunch of soak or team fight. But that does not mean it's always the wrong choice to send Artanis to solo a camp due to the fact he can do it alone and will never drop underneath 75% health, making him rather safe while doing it. Also, Artanis should be able to solo boss in theory, but it's extremely risky. You also need to take Sealed Surge at level 4 to do such a thing. I managed to do it in the testing room, but I'm not sure if it'll actually work in an actual game due to the fact when I tried it, the AI would not leave me alone and just let me try and solo the boss. But while doing it in the testing room, I did go down to 1 HP the whole time, so it is extremely risky and dangerous, and if the enemy catch you while doing it, you will die. I think that is the end of this guide, and I think I've talked about everything I need to about Artanis. Hopefully this guide has taught you a little bit of how to play Artanis, even though I'm sure it's rather long. Please like and share this video around, and leave a comment if you have anything to refute in this guide or anything to add. I will certainly add annotations if I feel the need to, and will update it as I see fit. Please let me know if you enjoyed this though also in the comments to let me know if I should do another one over a different character. I'm considering making this a series, but I'm not 100% sure yet, as it takes a lot of work and this took a long time to make. Thank you very much for watching, and bye-bye.